6 weeks had passed since her twins vanished without a trace, and with each passing day, the mother's hope of seeing them again grew dimmer. But on one fateful day, when a homeless woman told her to check the KFC bathroom, everything changed in an instant. Why was the homeless woman so certain about where to look, and what horrifying truth would the mother uncover in the bathroom stalls? Before we dive in, comment where you're watching from today. And if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Emma Keyes stepped out of the police station, her shoulders slumped with the weight of disappointment and frustration. The bright California sun seemed to mock her despair as she made her way down the steps towards the parking lot. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions, replaying the heated argument that had just transpired inside. "Emma, wait!" She paused, turning to see Detective Maya Kuda hurrying after her. The detective's face was etched with concern and a hint of guilt. "I'm sorry about how things went in there," Maya said, slightly out of breath. "We didn't mean to dismiss your lead, it's just, we've been working on this case for over a month now, and every dead end feels like a personal failure." Emma nodded, understanding the detective's position but unable to shake her own frustration. "I know you're doing your best, Detective Kuda, but that man who contacted me about seeing the girls in New York, it sounded credible." Maya sighed, running a hand through her short, dark hair. "I understand, Emma, but you have to see it from our perspective. The reward you've offered on those missing posters, it's attracting all sorts of people looking for a quick payday." "But what if it's not?" Emma countered, her voice rising slightly. "What if Freya and Sophia were kidnapped and taken out of state? We can't just ignore that possibility." "We're not ignoring it," Maya assured her. "We put out alerts within the first 24 hours when you reported it to us last month. If they left the state, they'd have to be traveling under different identities. But Emma, we have to consider that we might be looking too far when they could still be right here in California." Emma shook her head, frustration bubbling up inside her. "But we've found nothing here, Maya. No trails, no evidence. We need to broaden our search." The detective placed a comforting hand on Emma's arm. "I promise you, we'll look into the New York lead. We just need to be thorough and methodical. Can you trust us on that?" Emma's eyes welled with tears. "I'm trying," she whispered, "but every day that passes, I feel like I'm losing hope of ever seeing my girls again." Maya's expression softened. "I can't imagine what you're going through, Emma, but don't give up hope. We won't stop looking until we find them." With a final reassuring squeeze of Emma's arm, Detective Kuda headed back into the station. Emma watched her go, then turned and walked to her car, her mind already racing with plans for the day ahead. As she settled into the driver's seat, Emma glanced at the stack of missing person flyers on the passenger seat. Freya and Sophia's smiling faces beamed up at her from the glossy paper, their matching green eyes and strawberry blonde hair, a painful reminder of what she'd lost. 6 weeks. It had been 6 weeks since her twin daughters had vanished without a trace. Emma started the engine, determination setting in. She may have taken a month off work, but this was her new full-time job, finding her girls. For hours, Emma drove through the city, stopping at every bus station, subway entrance, restaurant and mall exits she could find. She hung new posters, replaced torn or faded ones, and spoke to anyone who would listen about her missing daughters. As the afternoon wore on, exhaustion began to set in. Emma checked her watch, 3 p.m. The lunch rush would be over, making it a good time for a much-needed coffee break. She spotted a KFC nearby and pulled into the parking lot. Before entering the restaurant, Emma hung her last few posters on the wall outside. She stepped back, looking at the girls' faces one more time. With a deep sigh, she pulled out her phone and scrolled through her messages. No new text, just previous false leads, trolls, scams, and even a few threatening calls filled her inbox. "Please," she whispered to herself, "let today be the day someone sees them. Let this be the break we need." With a final glance at the posters, Emma pocketed her phone and reached for the KFC's door handle. But something caught her eye, stopping her in her tracks. A homeless woman, perhaps around Emma's own age, was huddled near the entrance, and in that moment, Emma felt a surge of compassion. Here was another soul who had clearly lost something precious in life. Without hesitation, Emma reached for her wallet and pulled out a few dollar bills. As she approached the woman to offer the money, the homeless woman's gaze flickered to the missing person posters. "Are you searching for them?" she asked, her voice hoarse but clear. Emma's heart skipped a beat. "Yes," she replied cautiously. "I'm Emma, their mother. Why do you ask?" The woman's eyes, though bloodshot, held a spark of recognition. "I've seen them before," she said, "right here. Those blue Hello Kitty dresses. I'm almost certain it was them." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She studied the homeless woman carefully, looking for any signs that she might be under the influence of drugs or alcohol. But despite her disheveled appearance and reddened eyes, the woman's gaze was steady and her movements seemed coordinated. "When?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "When did you see them?" The homeless woman furrowed her brow in concentration. "It was about a month ago, I think. Yes, that sounds right." Emma's heart raced. The timeline matched up with when the girls had gone missing. She crouched down next to the woman, careful not to crowd her. "Can you tell me more? What exactly did you see?" The woman nodded, her eyes taking on a faraway look as she recalled the memory. "I remember it clearly because it was a rare day when I had enough money saved up to buy a proper meal. I was standing in line at the counter, and that's when I saw them, two little girls in matching blue Hello Kitty dresses. They were so adorable. I couldn't help but notice them." Emma's hands trembled as she listened. "Did you see who they were with?" The homeless woman shook her head. "I'm sorry, I can't remember that part. There were a lot of people in here that day, but I do remember seeing them go into the bathroom." "The bathroom?" Emma repeated, her mind racing. "Yes," the woman confirmed. "I saw them go in, but I don't recall seeing them come out. Then again, I was focused on ordering my food, and it was quite crowded. I might have just missed them leaving." Emma stood up abruptly, her heart pounding. "Thank you," she said quickly, pressing the money into the woman's hand. "You have no idea how much this means to me." Without waiting for a response, Emma rushed into the KFC, her eyes immediately scanning the restaurant. She headed straight for the restrooms, ignoring the curious glances from the other patrons. The women's restroom was empty, but Emma checked each stall anyway, her hopes rising and falling with each push of a door. Finding nothing, she hesitated for a moment before slipping into the men's room when she was sure no one was around. As she was peering under the last stall, the door opened behind her. Emma whirled around to see a janitor standing there, a confused and slightly alarmed expression on his face. "Ma'am?" he asked hesitantly. "Are you all right? This is the men's room." Emma felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," she stammered. I thought I lost something in here earlier. My mistake." The janitor nodded, though he still looked skeptical. "Well, if you've lost something, I'd be happy to keep an eye out for it during my cleaning rounds." "Thank you," Emma said quickly, edging past him towards the door. "But I think I must have left it somewhere else. Sorry for the confusion." As she exited the men's room, Emma felt a wave of defeat wash over her. She had been so sure this lead would pan out, but once again she was left empty-handed. With a heavy sigh, she decided to use the women's restroom before leaving. Emma entered a stall, her mind still racing with possibilities. As she reached for the toilet paper, something caught her eye. There, wedged behind the trash bin, was a glint of something familiar. Her heart pounding, Emma pushed the bin aside and reached down. Her fingers closed around a pair of glasses, their lenses covered in a thin layer of dust. As she pulled them out, her breath caught in her throat. The brown-red plastic frames were unmistakable. They were identical to the pair Freya wore. With shaking hands, Emma carried the glasses to the sink. She gently washed away the dust, her mind flashing back to the day she had Freya's name carved into the temple of the frames. Turning them over, she saw it there, clear as day. Freya keys etched into the plastic. A sob escaped Emma's lips as she clutched the glasses to her chest. The homeless woman had been telling the truth. Her daughters had been here, in this very restroom. It wasn't much, but it was the first tangible piece of evidence she'd found in 6 long weeks. With renewed determination, Emma straightened her shoulders and marched out of the restroom. She had a lead now, and she wasn't about to let it slip away. Emma emerged from the restroom, Freya's glasses clutched tightly in her hand. Her mind was racing, trying to process this new information and figure out her next move. As she stepped into the main area of the restaurant, she nearly collided with the janitor she had encountered earlier. "Oh, excuse me," she said, steadying herself. Then an idea struck her. "Actually, sir, can I ask you something?" The janitor nodded, leaning on his mop. "Sure thing, ma'am. What can I help you with?" Emma held up the glasses. "Did you by any chance see two little girls wearing blue Hello Kitty dresses about a month ago? One of them would have been wearing these glasses." The janitor's brow furrowed as he thought. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I can't say that I did. It might not have been during my shift, and to be honest, a month is a long time to remember specific customers." Emma's heart sank a little, but she pressed on. "What about the women's restroom? Do you clean in there as well?" The janitor shook his head. "No, ma'am, I only handle the men's room. We have a separate cleaner for the women's facilities, but she's not in today." "I see," Emma said, trying to hide her disappointment. "Well, thank you anyway. Is there anyone else here who might have been working that day? Maybe someone at the counter?" The janitor gestured towards the front of the restaurant. "You could try asking the staff up there. They might remember something." Emma thanked him and made her way to the counter. It was a quiet time of day, with no line of customers waiting to order. The young cashier looked up as Emma approached, offering a practiced smile. "Welcome to KFC. How can I help you today?" Emma took a deep breath, steeling herself. "I'm not here to order. I'm looking for information about my daughters." She held up the glasses. "I found these in your restroom. They belong to my daughter, Freya. She and her twin sister have been missing for 6 weeks. The cashier's smile faded, replaced by a look of concern. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry to hear that, but I'm afraid I don't remember seeing any twins recently." "Please," Emma said, her voice cracking slightly. "They would have been wearing matching blue Hello Kitty dresses. It would have been about a month ago." The cashier shook her head apologetically. "I'm really sorry, but I don't recall seeing them. Let me ask the others, though." She turned and called out to her co-workers in the kitchen. "Hey guys, can you come here for a sec?" A few more employees gathered at the counter, and the cashier explained the situation. Emma showed them the glasses and described the girls, but each staff member shook their head in turn. Just as Emma was about to give up hope, the manager emerged from the back office. "What's going on out here?" he asked, looking from his employees to Emma. "Sir," Emma said, turning to face him, "my name is Emma Keyes. My twin daughters have been missing for 6 weeks, and I've just found evidence that they were here in your restaurant about a month ago." She held up the glasses. "Is there any way I could check your security footage from that day?" The manager, whose name tag read Kenny Brown, frowned slightly. "I'm very sorry about your daughters, Mrs. Keyes, but we can't just give access to our security footage to anyone who asks. We'd need police confirmation for something like that." Emma nodded, understanding but frustrated. "Of course I understand. Let me call the detective in charge of the case right now." She pulled out her phone and dialed Detective Kuda's number, silently praying the detective would pick up. After a few rings, she heard Maya's voice on the other end. "Detective Kuda speaking." "Maya, it's Emma Keyes," she said quickly. "I'm at the KFC on Lincoln Boulevard. I found Freya's glasses here, and I need your help to access their security footage." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. "You found her glasses? Emma, that's significant. I'll be there as soon as I can. In the meantime, can you put the manager on the phone?" Emma handed her phone to Kenny, who listened intently as Detective Kuda spoke. After a few moments, he nodded. "Yes, of course, Detective. We'll cooperate fully. I'll start preparing the footage now." He handed the phone back to Emma, who quickly confirmed a few more details with Maya before hanging up. Kenny turned to Emma, his demeanor noticeably softer. "Mrs. Keyes, if you'd like to wait in my office, I'll get started on retrieving that footage. The detective should be here soon." Emma nodded gratefully, following Kenny to the back office. As she settled into a chair, her mind was a whirlwind of emotions: hope, fear, anticipation. They all swirled together as she waited for Detective Kuda to arrive and for the chance to finally see what had happened to her precious girls. The minutes ticked by agonizingly slowly as Emma waited in Kenny's office. She clutched Freya's glasses in her hands, running her thumb over the engraved name again and again. The familiar shape and weight of the frames brought a flood of memories: Freya's excited smile when she first got them, the way she'd push them up her nose when she was concentrating on a book, the times Emma had to remind her not to leave them on the bathroom counter. A soft knock on the door jolted Emma from her reverie. Kenny poked his head in. "Mrs. Keyes, Detective Kuda is here." Emma stood quickly as Maya entered the room, her face a mix of concern and determination. "Emma," she said warmly, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Tell me everything." As Emma recounted her conversation with the homeless woman and the discovery of the glasses, Maya listened intently, jotting notes in her small notebook. When Emma finished, the detective turned to Kenny. "Mr. Brown, have you located the footage from the day in question?" Kenny nodded, gesturing to his computer. "I've pulled up the recordings from 6 weeks ago, the day the girls went missing. We'll need to go through it hour by hour." "Then let's get started," Maya said, pulling up a chair. For the next few hours, Emma, Maya, and Kenny pored over the security footage. They watched the comings and goings of countless customers, Emma's eyes straining for any glimpse of her daughters. Just when she was beginning to lose hope, Maya suddenly leaned forward, pointing at the screen. "There," she exclaimed. "Look, by the back entrance." Emma's heart leapt into her throat as she saw them, Freya and Sophia hand in hand, their blue Hello Kitty dresses unmistakable. They were being led by a tall man in a hoodie, his face obscured by the angle of the camera. "Oh my God," Emma whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "It's them. It's really them." They watched as the man guided the girls directly to the restroom, bypassing the counter entirely. Emma frowned, noticing something odd about the way the girls were behaving. "They don't look scared," she said, confusion evident in her voice. "It's like they know him." Maya nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Emma, does this man's walk look familiar to you? There's something distinctive about his gait." Emma studied the figure on the screen, watching the way he moved. There was a slight limp, a heaviness to his steps that tugged at her memory, but try as she might, she couldn't place it. I'm not sure. I can't think of anyone specific." The detective made a note in her pad. "I'm going to have our analysts run this through our system. Sometimes a person's walk can be as identifying as a fingerprint." They continued watching, but the camera's angle made it difficult to see much more. The man's face remained hidden by his hoodie, cap, and sunglasses, and the bathroom area was mostly out of frame. After reviewing the footage multiple times, Maya sat back with a sigh. "This is definitely a solid lead, Emma. We'll need to take this back to the station for further analysis." Emma nodded, her mind still reeling from seeing her daughters on the screen. "What about Freya's glasses? Can you use them for evidence?" "Absolutely," Maya said, holding out an evidence bag. "We'll run some tests, see if we can pick up any DNA or fingerprints other than Freya's." With a heavy heart, Emma placed the glasses in the bag. It felt like giving away a piece of her daughter, but she knew it was necessary. As Maya requested a copy of the footage from Kenny, Emma had a sudden thought. "Could I get a copy too?" she asked, pulling a USB drive from her purse. "Just in case I notice something later." Kenny hesitated, looking to Maya for approval. The detective nodded, and Kenny copied the files onto Emma's drive. As they prepared to leave, Emma's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from her husband, Daniel. "Don't forget, family game night at 7, we're hosting. Everyone's coming. Can you pick up some snacks on your way home? Love you." Emma closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. The thought of putting on a brave face for Daniel's boisterous family was almost too much to bear. But as she looked at the USB drive in her hand, she felt a glimmer of hope. For the first time in weeks, they had a real lead. "I'll be there," she texted back, her resolve strengthening. She had to keep going for Freya and Sophia. And maybe, just maybe, this would be the breakthrough they needed to bring her girls home. Emma glanced at her watch as she exited the manager's office room. 6:20 p.m. Time had flown by in Kenny's office, and now she was cutting it close for the family game night. Part of her wanted nothing more than to go home, curl up with her laptop, and study the footage over and over again. But she knew Daniel and his family were counting on her. With a sigh, she turned to the KFC counter. "I'll take 3 buckets of chicken and some large fries," she told the cashier. As an afterthought, she added, "And a 3-piece combo meal with a water, please." While waiting for her order, Emma's mind drifted to the homeless woman who had given her this crucial lead. She felt a surge of gratitude, mixed with a twinge of guilt for not thinking of her sooner. When her order was ready, Emma carefully balanced the food and made her way outside. To her relief, the homeless woman was still there, dozing against the wall of the restaurant. "Excuse me," Emma said softly, gently tapping the woman's shoulder as she crouched by her side. The woman startled awake, her eyes widening as she recognized Emma. "Oh, it's you again," she said, her voice gravelly from sleep. Emma smiled warmly, holding out the combo meal. "I wanted to thank you properly for your help. Because of what you told me, I found a new lead about my girls." The woman's face lit up as she accepted the food. "Really? Oh, that's wonderful news. I'm so glad I could help." "I never asked your name," Emma realized. "Maggie," the woman replied. "Maggie Laguna." "That's a beautiful name, Maggie," Emma said. "I'm Emma Keyes. Listen, I was wondering, if I need to find you again, where might I look?" Maggie thought for a moment. "Well, I'm usually around here or near the farmer's market a few blocks over. Can't miss me. I'm the one with the cardboard sign and the charming personality," she added with a wry smile. Emma chuckled, feeling a genuine moment of lightness for the first time in weeks. "Maggie, I promise you this. When I find my daughters, I'll come back here to let you know. You've given me hope when I needed it most." Maggie's eyes welled up with tears. "I'll be praying for you and your girls, Emma. I hope you find them soon." With a final thank you and goodbye, Emma made her way back to her car. As she settled into the driver's seat, she took a deep breath, trying to center herself. The events of the day swirled in her mind: the disappointment at the police station, the unexpected lead from Maggie, the heart-stopping moment of seeing her girls on the security footage. She took a long swig from her soda, needing the sugar boost to get through the evening ahead. As she pulled out of the parking lot, Emma's determination solidified. The police had the footage now, and with any luck, they'd be able to identify the man by his distinctive walk. It wasn't much, but it was more than they'd had this morning. The evening traffic was heavy, and Emma found herself stuck in a sea of cars leaving work for the day. She texted Daniel, apologizing for running late and blaming the traffic. As she inched along the freeway, her mind kept drifting back to the USB drive in her purse. She was itching to watch the footage again, to scrutinize every frame for clues they might have missed. By the time Emma finally pulled into her driveway, several cars were already parked along the street. She could hear the muffled sounds of laughter and conversation from inside the house. Taking a deep breath, she gathered the food and prepared herself for the onslaught of Daniel's boisterous family. As she opened the front door, the noise hit her like a wave. Daniel's brothers were crowded around the coffee table, engrossed in what looked like an intense board game. Their mother, Laura, was in the kitchen with Daniel's sister-in-law, laying out plates and napkins. The kids were sprawled in front of the TV, controllers in hand as they battled it out in some video game. "I'm home," Emma called out, trying to inject some cheer into her voice. "Sorry I'm late. I brought chicken." A chorus of greetings and thank yous met her as she made her way to the dining room table with the food. She spotted Daniel, still absorbed in the board game with his brothers. Part of her wanted to pull him aside immediately and tell him about the day's developments, but seeing how relaxed and happy he looked, she hesitated. Instead, she approached him, touching his shoulder gently. "Hey, I'm back," she said softly. Daniel looked up, his face breaking into a warm smile. "Hey, honey, how'd your day go?" The simple question nearly broke Emma's composure. How could she possibly sum up the emotional roller coaster of the past few hours? But looking into Daniel's eyes, seeing the love and concern there, she knew she couldn't keep it from him. "Actually," she said, her voice low, "something happened today. Detective Kuda and we found some new evidence." Daniel's expression shifted immediately, the carefree smile replaced by intense focus. He turned to his younger brother, Kevin. "Hey, I'm going to sit this round out. You guys keep playing." As Daniel stood, the rest of the family seemed to sense the change in atmosphere. Emma felt their curious gazes on her back as she and Daniel made their way upstairs to their bedroom, seeking a moment of privacy amidst the chaos of the game night. As Emma and Daniel climbed the stairs to their bedroom, the sounds of the family gathering faded into a muffled backdrop. Emma's heart was pounding, her mind racing as she tried to figure out how to explain everything that had happened. Once inside their room, Daniel closed the door and turned to face her, his expression a mix of hope and apprehension. "Emma, what's going on? What kind of evidence did you find?" Emma took a deep breath, steadying herself. She reached into her purse and pulled out the USB drive, holding it up for Daniel to see. "I found Freya's glasses at a KFC today, the one in Lincoln Boulevard," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "And we got security footage of the girls there on the day they disappeared." Daniel's eyes widened in shock. "What? How did you find this?" Emma quickly recounted her conversation with Maggie, the homeless woman, and the subsequent discovery in the restroom. As she spoke, she moved to their computer, inserting the USB drive and pulling up the footage. Daniel leaned in close, his breath catching as the video began to play. Emma pointed to the screen, her finger shaking slightly. "There, by the back entrance. Do you see them?" A choked sob escaped Daniel's throat as he saw his daughters, their blue Hello Kitty dresses unmistakable, even on the grainy footage. "Oh my God," he whispered. "It's really them." They watched in tense silence as the man led the girls towards the restroom. Daniel's brow furrowed, his eyes fixed on the mysterious figure. "Who is that?" he asked, his voice tight with anger and fear. "And why do the girls seem so calm with him?" Emma shook her head. "We don't know, his face is hidden, but Detective Kuda noticed something about the way he walks. See how he's limping slightly? She said they might be able to identify him from his gait." Daniel leaned in closer, studying the man's movements. "He does have a distinctive walk," he murmured, "and he's a big guy, but I can't think of anyone we know who matches that description." Just then, Emma's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Her heart leapt when she saw it was Detective Kuda. "Maya," she answered quickly. "Did you find something?" Daniel watched anxiously as Emma listened, her face falling with each passing second. When she finally hung up, she looked defeated. "They couldn't identify him from his walk," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "There are just too many people with similar gaits in their system, and his face is too obscured by the hoodie and sunglasses for facial recognition." Daniel pulled Emma into a tight embrace as she fought back tears. "Hey, it's okay," he said softly, stroking her hair. "This is still more than we had this morning. The police know where the girls were last seen now. That's huge, Emma." Emma nodded against his chest, trying to draw strength from his words. After a moment, she pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Maya said they're going to canvass the area around the KFC, see if anyone remembers seeing anything suspicious that day." Daniel squeezed her hand reassuringly. "That's good. Someone must have seen something. We just need to keep pushing, keep hoping." Emma managed a small smile, grateful for Daniel's unwavering support. "You're right, we can't give up now." They stood there for a moment, drawing comfort from each other's presence. Then, reluctantly, Daniel glanced at the bedroom door. "We should probably head back down," he said. "They'll be wondering where we disappeared to." Emma nodded, taking a deep breath to compose herself. As they made their way back downstairs, hand in hand, she tried to prepare herself for the onslaught of family interaction ahead. When they reached the living room, Daniel's mother, Laura, immediately noticed their somber expressions. She excused herself from the conversation she was having and approached them, concern etched on her face. "Is everything all right?" she asked softly, leading them to a quieter corner of the room. Daniel and Emma exchanged a look before Daniel spoke. "Mum, we've had a development in the case," he said, keeping his voice low. "Emma found some new evidence today." Laura's eyes widened and she clasped Emma's hand tightly. "Oh, sweetheart, what did you find?" As Emma recounted the day's events once more, she was struck by the mix of hope and anguish on Laura's face. When she finished, Laura pulled them both into a fierce hug. "My brave, strong children," she murmured. "You've been through so much. Listen, I've been thinking, maybe it's time we hired a private investigator." Daniel started to protest, but Laura held up a hand to stop him. "Our family factory has been doing exceptionally well these past few months. Let me do this for you, for the girls. A PI might be able to move faster, dig deeper than the police can." Emma and Daniel exchanged a look, a spark of hope igniting between them. Before they could respond, Daniel's older brother, Dyson, approached the group. "Hey, what's with all the serious faces?" he asked, his tone light but his eyes concerned. "How are the search for my favorite nieces doing?" Emma felt a pang in her chest at the mention of the girls. Dyson had always been so good with Freya and Sophia, showering them with attention and gifts at every family gathering. She knew he must be missing them terribly too. "Actually, Dyson," she said, making a split-second decision, "I was wondering if you could help us. We're trying to get the word out about the girls as much as possible. Could you maybe share their photos on your social media? You have quite a following, don't you?" Dyson's face lit up. "Of course, anything I can do to help. I'll post about them right away, get my followers to spread the word." As Dyson pulled out his phone, Emma felt a small sense of accomplishment. Every little bit helped, and who knew? Maybe someone in Dyson's network would recognize the girls. The family game night continued around them, the laughter and chatter a stark contrast to the heavy conversation in their corner. But as Emma looked around at the faces of her extended family, all eager to help in whatever way they could, she felt a renewed sense of determination. They would find Freya and Sophia. They had to, and with the support of their family and this new lead, they were one step closer to bringing their girls home. As the family game night wound down and guests began to depart, Emma found herself standing on the porch, saying goodbye to the last of Daniel's relatives. Dyson, Daniel's older brother, was the last to leave. As he hugged Emma goodbye, she couldn't help but notice something odd about the way he moved. Dyson descended the porch steps with a slight limp, favoring his left leg. The movement was subtle, but in Emma's heightened state of awareness, it stood out like a beacon. She watched, her heart rate quickening, as he made his way to his car with the same distinctive gait. Emma's mind raced back to the security footage they had watched earlier. The man leading Freya and Sophia had walked with a similar limp. Could it be just a coincidence? As Dyson's car pulled away, Emma turned to Daniel, who was cleaning up in the living room. "Hey," she said, trying to keep her voice casual, "did you notice Dyson limping just now?" Daniel looked up from the board game he was packing away. "Oh yeah, he took a bad fall playing soccer last month, messed up his knee and ankle pretty badly." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Last month, around the same time the girls went missing, around the same time they were seen at the KFC with the limping man. She tried to push the thought away. This was Dyson, after all. He was family. He adored Freya and Sophia. There was no way he could be involved in their disappearance. Was there? But the seed of suspicion had been planted, and Emma couldn't shake it. She needed to see that footage again, to compare Dyson's walk to the man in the video. "I'm going to head upstairs," she told Daniel. "I want to look over some things before bed." Daniel nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Okay, honey. Don't stay up too late, all right? We both need our rest." Emma kissed him on the cheek and made her way upstairs. In their bedroom, she booted up the computer and inserted the USB drive containing the security footage. As the video played over and over again, she scrutinized every movement of the man leading the girls into the KFC. The more she watched, the more similarities she saw between the man's gait and Dyson's limp. The heaviness in the left step, the slight drag of the foot, it was eerily similar. Emma's mind whirled with possibilities. Could Dyson really be involved? But why? He had always been so kind to the girls, so attentive. He didn't have any children of his own, often joking that Freya and Sophia were the daughters he never had. She thought about telling Daniel her suspicions, but hesitated. The brothers had a complicated relationship, with years of unspoken tension between them. If she was wrong about this, it could drive an irreparable wedge between them. No, she decided. She needed more evidence before she could bring this to Daniel or the police. She needed to be absolutely certain. Emma spent the next hour rewatching the footage, making notes and trying to recall every interaction she'd had with Dyson over the past few weeks. Had there been any signs she'd missed? Any strange behavior she'd overlooked? It was well past midnight when Daniel finally came up to bed. Emma quickly closed the video and shut down the computer, not wanting to worry him with her suspicions just yet. As they lay in bed, Daniel's steady breathing beside her, Emma's mind continued to race. She thought about the way Dyson had always showered the girls with gifts, how he preferred to play with them at family gatherings rather than engage with the adults. At the time, it had seemed sweet, but now in the stillness of the night, those memories felt tainted. The pieces didn't fit together the way they used to. She replayed the moments in her head, Dyson's lingering glances, his too frequent offers to babysit, and his sudden appearance at their house during the day. Emma barely slept that night, her mind churning with suspicions and doubts. As the first light of morning crept through the curtains, she made a decision. She needed to visit Dyson, to see his reaction face to face. It was the only way to know for sure if her suspicions had any merit. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Daniel. As she got dressed, she rehearsed what she would say to Dyson in her head. How could she approach this without accusing him outright? Emma left a note for Daniel, saying she had gone out early to follow up on a lead. It wasn't entirely a lie, but the guilt of keeping her suspicions from him weighed heavily on her. The morning traffic was light as Emma made her way to Dyson's house. She had been there countless times for family gatherings, but today the familiar street felt alien and foreboding. As she approached Dyson's house, something caught her eye. His car was parked on the street instead of in the garage where he usually kept it. It was a small detail, but in Emma's heightened state of awareness, it stood out as odd. She parked behind Dyson's car and took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation ahead. Just as she was about to get out, she saw Dyson emerge from the garage. He was limping slightly, just as she had noticed the night before. Emma stepped out of her car, forcing a smile. "Dyson, good morning." Dyson looked startled to see her. "Emma, what are you doing here so early?" "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by," Emma lied smoothly. "I wanted to thank you again for offering to share the girls' photos on your social media." Dyson's face relaxed slightly, but Emma noticed a flicker of something. Was it nervousness? In his eyes. "Of course, anything for my favorite nieces. Did you want to come in?" Emma nodded and trailed behind Dyson toward the house. She noticed he guided her to the front door, while he slipped in through the garage. "Is everything all right with your garage?" she asked casually, keeping her tone light. Dyson hesitated for a split second before answering. "Oh yeah, just got some stuff piled up in there. It's easier for you to use the front door right now. I just need to tie everything up, that's why I went in that way." Once inside, Emma settled on the couch, while Dyson went to the kitchen to make coffee. She took the opportunity to glance around the living room, looking for anything out of the ordinary. Her eyes fell on a black hoodie and a cap draped over a chair. It looked similar to the one worn by the man in the security footage. Dyson returned with 2 mugs of coffee. As he handed one to Emma, she decided to dive right in. "Dyson, I wanted to ask you something. Do you remember where you were the day the girls disappeared?" The mug in Dyson's hand trembled slightly, coffee sloshing dangerously close to the rim. I was at the soccer club, wasn't I? That's where I hurt my knee." Emma's heart raced. "The soccer club? Are you sure? Because we found some security footage of the girls at a KFC that day, and the man with them had a limp very similar to yours. Dyson's face paled visibly. He set down his mug, his hands shaking. Emma, what are you saying? You can't possibly think— I don't know what to think, Dyson, Emma said, her voice trembling. But I need to know the truth. Where were you really that day? Dyson stood abruptly, his face a mask of anger and fear. I think you should leave now, Emma. This is ridiculous. I would never hurt the girls. Emma stood too, her suspicions growing stronger by the second. Then why are you acting so strange? Why can't you give me a straight answer? She moved towards the garage door, determined to see what Dyson was hiding. What's really in your garage, Dyson? She pressed, her voice firm. Why do you keep going in and out through there? Dyson's reaction was immediate and terrifying. He lunged for a nearby cabinet, yanking open a drawer and pulling out a gun. Emma froze, her blood turning to ice as Dyson pointed the weapon at her. Don't move, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You shouldn't have come here, Emma. You shouldn't have asked questions. Emma raised her hands slowly, her mind racing. Dyson, please. Whatever's going on, we can figure this out. Just tell me where the girls are. I know you must have your reasons. Dyson's face contorted with a mix of emotions, fear, anger, and something that looked almost like remorse. They're fine, he said. They're safe, but if you don't stay quiet, if you don't do exactly what I say, that might change. Do you understand? Emma nodded, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Dyson motioned with the gun, directing her towards the garage door. As he reached to open it, Emma's mind whirled with possible escape plans. But before she could act, the unthinkable happened. The door burst open from the other side, revealing Daniel wielding a shovel. In one swift motion, he swung the tool, connecting with the back of Dyson's head. Dyson crumpled to the ground, the gun clattering across the floor. Emma stood in shock, her eyes darting between her unconscious brother-in-law and her husband. Daniel. How did you know? Daniel dropped the shovel, rushing to embrace Emma. I saw your note and something felt off. I checked the security footage and saw how you reacted to Dyson's limp last night. I put it together and came as fast as I could. As Daniel held her, Emma's legs gave out, the adrenaline leaving her body in a rush. They sank to the floor together, both trembling. The girls? Emma gasped. He said they're here, they're safe. Daniel nodded, already pulling out his phone to call 911. As he reported the situation to the emergency operator, Emma crawled towards the garage door. With shaking hands, she pushed it open. There, huddled on a pair of mattresses in the corner of the garage, were Freya and Sophia. They looked scared and confused, but alive and unharmed. Mommy? Freya's small voice broke the silence. Emma sobbed, gathering her daughters in her arms. It's okay, babies. Mommy's here. You're safe now. As sirens wailed in the distance, Emma held her girls close, hardly daring to believe that this nightmare was finally over. Daniel joined them, wrapping his arms around his family, tears streaming down his face. The road ahead would be long and difficult. There would be questions to answer, trauma to process, and a family forever changed by betrayal. But in that moment, reunited at last, Emma felt a glimmer of hope. They were together again, and together they could face whatever came next. The next few hours passed in a blur of police sirens, paramedic checks, and a flurry of questions from Detective Kuda and her team. Detective Kuda quickly took charge, directing officers to secure the area and paramedics to check on the girls. Dyson, who had been unconscious since Daniel's blow with the shovel, began to stir. As the police moved to restrain him, his eyes fluttered open, immediately locking onto Daniel's face. The fog of confusion quickly gave way to a burning rage. You! Dyson spat, struggling against the officers holding him. You always have to ruin everything, don't you, Daniel? Always getting the best of everything, as if you were the first child, but I was here first. I deserve more. Daniel stood firm, his face a mask of pain and anger. Dyson, you're the one who's been poisoning this family. We've all tried to make space for you, to prioritize your wants and needs, but it's never been enough, has it? Dyson's face contorted with fury, I am the first child. I deserve—" "You deserve nothing," Daniel interrupted, his voice rising. "You're like a cancer in this family, Dyson. You've hurt us all, but taking my daughters, that's unforgivable." Daniel stepped closer, his eyes boring into Dyson's. "I thought you had changed. I hoped you had, but you're nothing but a disappointment. From now on, you're not my brother. You're not part of this family. I'll make sure you rot behind bars for what you did to my girls." Dyson, his face twisted with hatred, gathered what saliva he could and spat directly at Daniel. The officers holding Dyson quickly pulled him back, securing him more tightly. "Get him out of here," Detective Kuda ordered, disgust evident in her voice. As the police led Dyson to the waiting patrol car, Emma watched the exchange with a mixture of horror and relief. The brother-in-law she thought she knew was gone, replaced by this angry, spiteful man. But he was caught now. He couldn't hurt her family anymore. Emma turned back to where Freya and Sophia were being examined by the paramedics, Daniel already moving to join them. The girls clung to each other, their eyes wide and fearful, only relaxing slightly when Emma or Daniel was in their line of sight. Detective Kuda approached Emma, her face a mix of relief and concern. "Emma, I know this is difficult, but we need to ask the girls some questions about what happened. Are you up for being there with them?" Emma nodded, her throat tight. Of course, whatever they need. As they made their way to where the girls were sitting, Emma saw Dyson being pushed into the back of a police car. The vehicle pulled away. His eyes met hers for a brief moment, filled with a mixture of shame and defiance. Emma quickly looked away, focusing on her daughters. Detective Kuda crouched down in front of Freya and Sophia, her voice gentle. "Hi, girls, I'm Detective Meyer. Can you tell me what happened on the day your Uncle Dyson took you to KFC?" Freya, always the more talkative of the two, spoke up first. "Uncle Dyson said he was our new daddy now. He said Mommy and Daddy were busy and had to go on a business trip for a very long time." Emma's heart shattered at these words. She wanted to interrupt, to reassure the girls that it wasn't true, but she knew she needed to let them speak freely. Sophia nodded, her voice trembling in a whisper. "He came to our house that afternoon, and he asked if we wanted to go to KFC with him. We said yes, but we never went home. He took us to different places. It was scary." Detective Kuda nodded encouragingly. "You're both being very brave. Can you tell me more about the places you stayed?" The girls described a series of motels and abandoned buildings, never staying in one place for too long. They spoke of cold floors and meager meals, of Dyson's increasingly erratic behavior. "He was different," Freya said, her lower lip trembling. "Not like the uncle we knew. He was mean sometimes, and he came really close to us. It made us uncomfortable." Emma felt a wave of nausea at the implications of Freya's words. She exchanged a worried glance with Daniel, who looked equally distressed. Detective Kuda turned to Emma and Daniel. "We'll need to do a more thorough interview later, but this is a good start. We'll also need to have the girls examined at the hospital just to be safe." As the detective walked away to confer with her team, Daniel pulled Emma aside. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, his voice low and pained. "Something I should have told you a long time ago." Emma looked at him, a sense of dread settling in her stomach. "What is it?" Daniel took a deep breath. "Dyson, he's not my biological brother. My parents, they couldn't have children for years, so they adopted Dyson. Then, a few months later, my mum got pregnant with me." Emma's mind reeled with this new information. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "My parents always treated him like he was their own. They didn't want him to feel different," Daniel explained. "But Dyson, he always felt like an outsider. He was jealous of the bond I had with our parents, especially after Kevin was born." Emma remembered the tension she had always sensed between the brothers, the undercurrent of resentment that she had never quite understood. But why would he do this? Why take the girls? Daniel's face darkened. "There's more. Years ago, Dyson was involved in some bad things. He hurt someone, a co-worker who got a promotion over him. My parents covered it up, used their influence to keep him out of jail. That's why Mum never let him have any real power in the family business. She was afraid of what he might do. Emma felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. All this time, and you never said anything. I thought he had changed, Daniel said, his voice breaking. He seemed to love the girls so much, and I didn't want to add more strain or make him feel alienated when you or the girls found out about his past. I never imagined he would... His words trailed off, choked by the weight of his regret. Their conversation was interrupted by Laura, Daniel's mother, who rushed towards them, her face streaked with tears. "Oh, my darlings," she cried, pulling Emma and Daniel into a tight embrace. "I just heard. Are the girls all right?" As Emma assured Laura that Freya and Sophia were safe, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of anger. How much pain could have been avoided if the family had been honest about Dyson's past? Detective Kuda approached them again. "We found some disturbing evidence in Dyson's room," she said gravely. "Fake passports for the girls, along with plane tickets to a non-extradition country. It looks like he was planning to disappear with them." The implications of this hit Emma like a physical blow. If they hadn't found the girls today. "We'll need you all to come down to the station," Detective Kuda continued. "We have a lot of questions, and we'll need formal statements from everyone." As they prepared to leave for the police station, Emma looked at her family, her traumatized daughters, her guilt-ridden husband, her devastated mother-in-law. The road to healing would be long and difficult, but they were together, and for now that had to be enough. Emma gathered Freya and Sophia close, breathing in their familiar scent. "It's okay, my loves," she whispered. "We're going home soon. We're all going home." The police station was a hive of activity, as Emma, Daniel, Laura and the girls were led to separate interview rooms. Emma's heart ached as she watched Freya and Sophia being gently guided away by a child psychologist. The girls clung to each other, their eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. "It's okay, sweethearts," Emma reassured them, forcing a smile. "Mommy and Daddy will be right here. These nice people just want to talk to you for a little bit." As the door clicked shut behind her daughters, a surge of emotion rose in Emma's chest, threatening to spill over. She drew in a deep breath, trying to steady herself for the difficult questions that lay ahead. Daniel stood close beside her, his hands wrapped around hers, grounding her in the midst of the turmoil. Detective Kuda led Emma to a small, stark room with a table and 3 chairs. "I know this is difficult," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "But I need to ask you both about any family conflicts or significant events that occurred close to the time the girls were taken. Was there anything that might have triggered Dyson's actions?" Daniel furrowed his brow, thinking hard. After a moment, his eyes widened with realization. "Actually, yes," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of the memory. "About a week before the girls disappeared, we had a family meeting at a notary's office. Mom Dyson, our younger brother Kevin and I were there to settle some details about the family inheritance that Mom had prepared." Laura nodded, her face etched with pain and regret. "I had prepared the inheritance distribution," she added softly. "Dyson, he didn't receive any part of the family factory. I allocated him a set amount of cash and a plot of land instead." Detective Kuda leaned forward, her interest piqued. "And how did Dyson react to this news?" Daniel exchanged a look with his mother before continuing. "He was upset, to say the least. He didn't say much at the time, but you could see the anger in his eyes. I never thought—" His voice trailed off, choked with emotion. Laura reached out and squeezed her son's hand. "We had our reasons for the decision," she explained to the detective, "but looking back, I can see how it might have pushed Dyson over the edge." Daniel nodded, his face a mask of guilt and realization. "That must be why he did this," he said quietly. "He was jealous, angry. He wanted to hurt us, to hurt me, by taking the girls." Detective Kuda made a note in her file, her expression grave. "This is significant information," she said. "It provides a potential motive for Dyson's actions. We'll need to look into the details of this inheritance meeting and the documents that were signed." As the detective continued her questioning, Emma sat in stunned silence, processing this new information. The idea that a family disagreement over money could have led to her daughter's kidnapping was almost too much to bear. She looked at Daniel and Laura, seeing the pain and guilt etched on their faces, and realized that the ripple effects of Dyson's actions had touched every part of their family. As the intense round of interviews at the police station concluded, the Keyes family found themselves reunited in the lobby. Freya and Sophia, exhausted but relieved to be back with their parents, clung tightly to Emma and Daniel's hands. Laura, Daniel's mother, stood close by, her face a mixture of relief and lingering worry. Detective Kuda approached the family, her expression softening. "We're done for now. An officer will escort you home." She then crouched down to the twins' level, her tone gentle. "And Freya, I have something for you." Reaching into her pocket, she pulled out Freya's glasses. The girl's face lit up with relief and excitement. "You found them!" Freya exclaimed, quickly slipping them on. "I've been struggling to see the whole time." "Actually, your mum found them for you. I just borrowed them from her," Maya said with a warm smile. At the mention of the glasses, Emma's breath hitched, suddenly remembered something crucial, her promise to the homeless woman. "Could we make a quick stop at the KFC on Lincoln Boulevard before going home? There's someone I need to see." The officer who was tasked to escort them home nodded, understanding the significance after hearing about the case. They exited the station and climbed into the police car. As they drove, Emma explained to the family about Maggie, the homeless woman who had provided the vital clue that led to finding the girls. When they arrived at the KFC, Emma's heart leapt with relief as she spotted Maggie in her usual spot. She quickly got out of the car, approaching the woman with a warm smile. "Maggie," Emma called out, her voice filled with emotion, "I found them. You helped me find my girls." Maggie's weathered face broke into a wide smile. "Oh, thank the Lord," she said, her eyes welling up with tears. "I've been praying for you." The rest of the family joined Emma. Daniel stepped forward, extending his hand to Maggie. "Thank you," he said, his voice choked with gratitude. "We can never repay you for what you've done." Freya and Sophia, still shy and a bit overwhelmed, offered small waves and quiet thank yous to the woman who had played such a crucial role in their rescue. Laura, who had been observing the scene with growing emotion, suddenly spoke up. "We can't just leave her here," she said, her voice firm with resolve. "Maggie, you helped bring our girls back home. You should have a home too." Emma and Daniel exchanged surprised but approving glances. "Laura's right," Emma said. "Maggie, would you like to come with us? We can find you a temporary place to stay while we figure out something more permanent." Maggie looked stunned, her eyes darting between the family members as if searching for any sign of insincerity. You do that for me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel nodded, placing a gentle hand on Maggie's shoulder. "Of course, you're part of this story now, part of our family's story." With tears streaming down her face, Maggie nodded. I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you all so much." As they helped Maggie into the police car, Emma felt a wave of emotion wash over her. This day, which had started with such fear and uncertainty, was ending with not just the return of her daughters, but with an act of kindness that felt like the beginning of healing. The officer, who had been patiently waiting, smiled at the scene. "Ready to go home?" he asked. Emma looked at her family, Daniel, the girls, Laura, and now Maggie, and nodded. "Yes," she said, her voice filled with a new sense of hope. "Let's go home." As they drove away from the KFC, Emma knew that the road ahead would still be challenging. There would be therapy sessions, legal proceedings, and the long process of rebuilding trust and security. But in this moment, surrounded by love and the power of human kindness, she felt ready to face whatever came next. They were together, they were safe, and they were moving forward, one step at a time towards healing and a brighter future.